I know what it feels like to stay silent, even when your heart wants to speak. For years, I believed the biggest barrier to learning English was grammar or vocabulary, but I was wrong. The real enemy was fear. Fear of mistakes, fear of laughter, fear of sounding foolish. That fear kept me quiet, and silence became the cage that held me back. One day I realized something simple yet powerful: silence never teaches you English. If I wanted to learn to speak, I had to open my mouth, and the safest way to begin was by talking to myself. At first it felt strange, even a little silly. I wondered if I was losing my mind speaking alone in my room. But then I reminded myself crazy is staying silent for years and never improving. Smart is using every chance to practice, even if no one else is listening. When I talked to myself, there was no judgment, no laughter, no eyes watching me. Just my own voice, soft at first, then slowly stronger. Every word became a small victory. Every sentence became a step toward fluency. I thought about how children learn their first language. They don't sit with grammar books or memorize rules. They speak, they repeat, they make mistakes, and they try again. Their mouths and brains learn to dance together through practice, not silence. So, why couldn't I do the same? I began with tiny sentences, 2 or 3 words. At first they sounded broken, but broken words are still better than silence. Slowly my voice grew familiar. My tongue and lips adjusted to the rhythm of English. And the more I spoke, the more confident I felt. Confidence, I discovered, is not something you wait for, it is something you create. I carried this practice everywhere. While walking, I would whisper, "I am walking to the bus stop." While cooking, I would say, "I am making rice." While cleaning, I would tell myself, "I am cleaning the table." My life became my classroom. The actions of my day became lessons, and the more I did it, the more natural English felt. Soon I discovered another powerful trick: the mirror. When I stood in front of it and spoke, it felt real, almost like a conversation. I could see my eyes, my mouth, my expressions. At first I laughed at myself. I felt shy even when alone. But the mirror became my friend, my silent teacher. It showed me if I was smiling, if my face carried fear or confidence. I practiced looking strong even when I felt nervous. Day by day, the mirror taught me not just words, but courage. I would ask myself questions and answer them. How are you today? I am fine. I feel happy. What will you do today? I will go to work. I will study English. It was simple, but it felt alive, and it trained my brain to think in English automatically. The habit of asking and answering kept my mind active, like a game I could play anytime, anywhere. With time, my sentences grew longer. Instead of only describing what I was doing, I began creating small stories. Yesterday I went to the shop. I bought apples. I met a friend. I came home. 4 short sentences became a real story. From there, I added more details, more feelings. I wasn't just speaking words anymore, I was speaking life. To strengthen this even further, I began recording my voice. At first, it was uncomfortable to hear myself. The voice in the recording didn't sound like the one in my head. I noticed mistakes, pauses, repeated words. But those recordings became my personal training ground. They showed me my weaknesses, but also revealed my progress. With each recording, I improved. Months later, when I listened back to my first attempts, I laughed, not in shame but in pride, because I could hear how far I had come. Talking about my feelings also became a powerful practice. Instead of hiding emotions, I spoke them out loud. I feel tired. I feel happy. I feel nervous. Those sentences were honest and alive. They connected English to my real experiences, making the words unforgettable. Even negative feelings became useful. On lonely days, I would say, "I feel lonely, but I can talk to myself in English." And suddenly the loneliness felt lighter. Over time, I added future sentences. Tomorrow, I will practice more. One day, I will speak fluently. I will travel. I will connect with people. These promises gave me hope and energy. Every "I will" planted a seed for tomorrow. Day by day, my small steps became habits. And habits, not talent or luck, are what create success. My journey began in silence, but silence no longer controls me. My voice became my classroom. My mirror became my partner, my questions became my teachers, and my stories became my lessons. Talking to myself was never madness, it was preparation for the life I wanted. Type continue to receive the next part. The habit of speaking to myself started as an experiment, but soon it became a part of my life. In the mornings I would stand in front of the mirror and begin with, I am sentences. I am ready, I am strong, I am learning English. They were simple, but they carried power. Each sentence wasn't only practice, it was a message to myself, a promise that I was moving forward. These small affirmations built courage inside me, shaping not just my English, but also the way I saw myself. I noticed how these tiny exercises fit seamlessly into my daily life. While brushing my teeth, I would say, I am brushing my teeth. When I cooked, I would narrate, I am cooking dinner. On the bus, I whispered, I am sitting, I am waiting. These weren't grand speeches. They were ordinary words describing ordinary actions. But ordinary words spoken daily became extraordinary progress. Without realizing it, I was building fluency step by step, just as a child learns by living language, not memorizing it. The real transformation came when I stopped waiting for perfection. I used to believe I needed a flawless accent or perfect grammar before daring to speak. But waiting for perfection is a trap, it means waiting forever. Once I embraced mistakes as proof of learning, the fear began to fade. Broken words were not failures, they were evidence of growth. And each time I corrected myself, I felt stronger. Recording my voice was one of the bravest steps I took. At first, the sound made me cringe. It didn't sound like the confident voice I wanted. But instead of running from it, I leaned in. I listened carefully, noticing the pauses, the repeated words, the sentences that stopped halfway. Then I tried again, recording the same topic once more. The difference was immediate. With each attempt, I grew smoother, more natural. My phone turned into a private teacher, one that was honest and available anytime. Months later, I played back some of my earliest recordings. The nervous voice, the halting rhythm, the broken sentences, they felt so far from the person I had become. And that realization gave me pride. It was living proof that consistent practice, even in the smallest amounts, creates real change. I also began using my voice to talk about my emotions. I feel tired, I feel happy, I feel nervous, but I am learning. Speaking my feelings out loud gave me a strange kind of freedom. It was as though English became not only a language for communication, but also a tool for self-discovery. When I admitted my emotions in English, I faced them honestly and softened their weight. Even sadness or loneliness became fuel for progress. Saying I feel lonely but I will practice anyway turned weakness into strength. From there, I discovered the power of asking myself questions. Instead of waiting for a teacher or a friend to test me, I became my own partner. How am I today? I am fine. I feel calm. What will I do today? I will work. I will study English. What do I like to eat? I like rice. I like fruit. These tiny exchanges turned into conversations alive and spontaneous. My brain began to think faster, searching for answers automatically. Slowly, English wasn't something I translated, it became the language of my thoughts. And then came stories. At first, they were no more than 3 or 4 sentences. Yesterday, I went to the shop. I bought apples. I met a friend. I came home. Short, simple, but powerful. Each story connected one thought to the next, teaching me the natural flow of conversation. With time, I added details, feelings, and sequences. Yesterday, I felt tired, but I went to the shop. I bought apples and smiled when I met a friend. I felt happy on the way home. These stories turned practice into something real, personal, and memorable. The more I practiced, the more my daily life transformed into lessons. A walk outside became a chance to describe what I saw. I see cars. I see people. I see the sky. Waiting at the bus stop became practice. I am waiting for the bus. I am looking at the road. I am thinking about my day. Life was no longer just routine, it was training ground alive with possibility. Through this, I discovered that success wasn't built on sudden leaps, but on small daily steps. Even 1 minute of speaking was better than none, and 1 minute each day repeated over weeks and months became a river of progress. Habits were the real secret. Just like brushing my teeth, practicing English became automatic, a natural part of who I was. Every sentence I spoke alone, whether in the kitchen, in the mirror, or into a recording, wasn't wasted. They were preparing me for something bigger. My private practice wasn't only about fluency, it was about building courage for the day I would need to use my English with the world. The day I finally used my private practice in public came quietly without warning. I was at a small shop needing to ask for something in English. Normally I would have frozen my mind, going blank, my tongue heavy with fear. But this time was different. My brain remembered the sentences I had whispered to myself countless times. The words slipped out, shaky but clear. "Excuse me, can you help me?" The shopkeeper smiled, answered, and suddenly I realized something extraordinary. All those hours of self-talk had been preparing me for this exact moment. My practice wasn't imaginary, it was real. That small success gave me courage. If I could do it once, I could do it again. And so I began using English in small interactions, a greeting to a stranger, a question to a bus driver, a short exchange with a colleague. Each time I felt the same nervous flutter in my chest, but behind it I felt the strength of my practice. I had already spoken these sentences to myself 100 times. Speaking them to others was just the next step. The mirror method, the recordings, the questions, the daily habits, all of it had been my training ground, my private rehearsal. Now the world became my stage. At first I stumbled, my accent felt heavy, my grammar imperfect. But I noticed something surprising: people didn't care. They listened, they responded, and they respected the effort. They cared about the courage, not the perfection. That realization was liberating. I started to imagine myself not just as a learner, but as someone who could truly live in English. I practiced conversations in the mirror as if I were preparing for meetings, interviews, or friendships. I trained myself to smile, to stand tall, to let my voice carry confidence, even when I felt nervous inside. Slowly, I began to see a new version of myself, the version I had dreamed of becoming. It wasn't always easy. There were days when I felt tired, discouraged, or overwhelmed. On those days, it was tempting to stay silent, to convince myself that progress was impossible. But then I remembered the simple truth: habits, not motivation, carry us forward. Even when I felt weak, I forced myself to whisper one sentence, just one. I am learning. I will not stop. That single sentence kept the chain alive. And keeping the chain alive was everything. I learned that success in English is not measured by grand achievements, but by the small sentences we refuse to skip. One sentence in the morning, one in the evening, one whispered while walking home together, they built a bridge. Day by day, I was crossing it. Talking about the future became my favorite practice. Tomorrow I will practice again. Next week I will speak longer. One day I will be fluent. Each promise fueled my determination. These weren't just words. They were seeds planted in my mind, shaping the person I was becoming. The more I said them, the more I believed them. And the more I believed, the more I acted. 6 months later, I listened to my first recordings again. The difference was breathtaking. The old voice was hesitant, timid, uncertain. The new one was stronger, smoother, alive. I smiled because I could hear my own growth. It wasn't only about English, it was about me. I had become someone who didn't hide from fear, but faced it one small step at a time. I realized then that talking to myself had never been about madness. It had been about preparation. Just as a singer practices before standing on stage, I had trained my voice in private so it could stand in public. My mirror had been my first audience. My recordings, my first critics, my daily questions, my first conversations. And now when I spoke to real people, I wasn't unprepared. I was ready. With each new interaction, my world expanded. I began making friends from other countries, joining conversations I once would have avoided, daring to share my ideas in English without apology. My sentences weren't perfect, but they were alive, and that was enough. The fear that once silenced me now fueled me, reminding me of how far I had come. And every time doubt whispered that I wasn't good enough, I returned to the basics. I stood in front of the mirror, looked myself in the eye, and said, I am ready. I am strong. I will speak. Those words, simple and powerful, became my anchor. They reminded me that my voice was not only a tool for learning, it was the foundation of my courage, my bridge to the life I wanted. As the months turned into a year, English was no longer something I practiced, it was something I lived. I spoke to myself without hesitation, turning every moment of my day into an opportunity to grow. My life became a classroom, my voice, my constant teacher. The fear that once paralyzed me was still there at times, but it no longer controlled me. Instead, it became a shadow behind me, proof of the distance I had traveled. I began to see the deeper gift hidden in this journey. Talking to myself had not only taught me English, it had taught me resilience. It showed me that change doesn't come from waiting for the perfect teacher, the perfect partner, or the perfect moment. Change comes from choosing to act even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. My small sentences in the mirror, my whispered stories while walking, my recorded promises about the future, these weren't just language exercises. They were acts of courage, tiny sparks of determination that grew into a fire. And then slowly I stepped further into the world. I joined conversations with strangers. I made friends online. I dared to speak up in meetings. Each time my heart raced, but my voice carried me through. I wasn't flawless, but I was real, and that was enough. I realized something profound: fluency is not about perfection. Fluency is about bravery, the bravery to speak, to connect, to share yourself even with mistakes. Looking back, I saw how every stage of my journey had built upon the last. The I am sentences gave me a foundation. The real-time action descriptions brought English into my daily life. The mirror gave me confidence, the recordings gave me feedback, the questions made my brain think, the stories taught me flow, the emotions gave me honesty. The future promises gave me hope, and the daily habit gave me consistency. Each part was like a brick, and together they built a house strong enough to carry me into the world. The day I first spoke to someone in English without fear was not an accident. It was the result of hundreds of private conversations with myself. I had been rehearsing for that moment all along. And just like a singer practices in silence before performing on stage, I had trained in solitude so that I could one day speak with confidence before others. Now, when I look in the mirror and speak to myself, I smile, not because I still need practice, but because I never want to forget where it started. Talking to myself was never a sign of madness. It was a sign of commitment, of refusing to let silence define me. It was proof that even when the world is absent, you can still choose to show up for yourself. I want to tell you this. You are not alone in your struggle. You do not need to wait for a teacher, a friend, or the perfect situation to practice English or any skill in life. You carry the most powerful classroom inside you. It is your voice, your determination, your courage to speak, even when no one listens. If you can learn to face yourself, you can learn to face the world. And perhaps the greatest lesson is this: success is not built in giant leaps. It is built in the quiet, unseen moments when you choose to take one small step. One sentence today, another tomorrow, and slowly the voice you once doubted becomes the voice that carries you into your future. So if you feel stuck, if you feel afraid, if you feel like your dream is too far away, remember my journey. Begin with just one sentence. Whisper it, repeat it, believe it. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for perfection. Speak now, and let your voice guide you forward. Because in the end, your voice is more than sound. It is your strength, your confidence, your bridge to the life you dream of. And the world is waiting to hear it. If this story touched you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs courage. Subscribe for more stories that inspire growth, and leave a comment below with your very first self-talk sentence in English. Your journey begins today, one word at a time.